get a small team together of people, like-minded people, who are passionate about your film.
You write from your heart and passion and instinct first and foremost. You're going to tap into some universal stuff.
Don't show guns.
Comedy tells the truth, and specifically it tells the truth about people.
There's a lot of talented people that never make it because they don't understand the business.
Don't let the fact that you don't have all the equipment you need stop you from making your movie.
This episode is brought to you by GlideCam Stabilizers. A GlideCam on your production means smooth, flowing shots with easy operation. Go to glidecam.com to find out more.
Tim Stabers joins us today. He's a producer, director, editor of Second Floor Pictures, and he produced the web series called Dream of Me. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thank you, FORRIS. Thanks for having me on.
Let's talk about how you made this web series, and you did a lot of it yourself, and as an indie filmmaker, you didn't have any money. Let's talk about that, some of the tricks you did.
One of the first decisions you make as an indie filmmaker is that you decide pretty early on, I'm going to be doing everything on a tripod. I think that's the first unconscious decision that you make, which is interesting because most of the time when you'll have a crew, you're trying to do things as quickly as possible. So that tends to push people towards handheld. Whereas if you put something on sticks, you'll kind of immediately get a slightly higher budget level out of your project. So that's the first thing you have to do when you're working by yourself. So, which ends up being a good thing because you do learn composition almost, right out of the gate. And
what if you don't have a tripod? Are there things you can do?
Yeah, I would say a step ladder functions really well. The less you have, the more creative you have to get, and sometimes that can lead you to doing camera angles that you might never have thought of otherwise, because you have to wrap it in a blanket and lay it on a chair or something like that, which is things that I had to do. Actually, if you during Dream of Me, there's some overhead shots that aren't particularly high, but just enough to give it some variation in the imagery rather than constantly being eye level. And one of the things I used for that was I had a pull-up bar that I used to work out at home, and then I had rigged up a series of belts, and I had the tripod kind of extended out and leveraged with some counterbalance weight with like a bag or something like that. So those were just some things that you can, whatever you can come up with, you'll have to use when, especially if you don't have camera stabilization. So.
Right. And we were talking about, you went to film school, you have access to all of this stuff. Then when you get out, you don't have access to it. So should that stop you?
Absolutely not. In fact, I would say one of the biggest advantages you could have as a filmmaker is to stay away from film school. And that comes from somebody who, I didn't go necessarily to like a film school. I went to Quinnipiac University, which I got much more of a practical and technical education there. That I would encourage anybody to do, is to really study the tools and the engineering behind like C-stands and stuff like that, because that's the really tough stuff that you have to solve. The creative voice, for me, in my opinion, a little bit starts to get watered down at film school, because you're in a group with so many other people that you're all listening to the same professors and the same teachers, which is fine for some people, but there's some people that tend to hear a rule and then they're like, well, now I can never break that rule. I can never cross the 180-degree line if I'm doing because I had a test once and it said don't. So I would say film school, that's a hot debate, but I would say stay away and get a practical education if you can, a technical education.
And as an example, you were talking about lighting before we recorded, before we started the recording. Tell me that story.
Well, the lighting, very quickly, I had decided, what better light than the sun. I mean, that's that's the best light there is, really. And because so much of this was supposed to take place at night and kind of in the dark, and he's in space, I quickly made the decision that I had to block out the windows, which was actually something I had learned. I don't know if you've probably seen the movie Clerks, the early Kevin Smith movie, which in that movie, the shutters are jammed, which he wrote into the script because he had to shoot at night with these big windows, but he had no way to light it to make it look like it was day because the story took place during the day. So he just wrote into the script that the shutters were jammed. So I did the same thing. I rigged up these pieces of cardboard as if he was trying to hide and block out all this light. And then I shot during the day so that I could bounce that light off of, I had picked up a couple of bounce boards, like 5-foot bounce boards, big white pieces of like foam core. And I would angle a lot of that off camera and just use all that sunlight during the day, but I was filming as though it was at night and lighting at night. And then for the flashlights and stuff, I found these little, there's so many, I can't tell you, like your phone, the light on the back of your phone is a really pretty quality LED now, on most people's phones, if you have one. And I use that a lot as like a halo light for a lot of shots and things like that. And you start to come up with all these little, the more you're limited, the more you realize just how much you did have access to, and how it's really just a matter of if you want to get it done, you will, and you'll find any way to do it. And that can only be a good thing, is to find out how to function on very, very little in all aspects of life, I would say. Yep.
Now the sound in the movie was really top quality sound, but did you do that mostly post-production, or was some of that recorded during the shooting?
There was I think there's one sound effect where the door falls off the hinges at the very end, when the alien is kind of at the door. And there was one layer of that sound that was from the set. Other than that, everything was sound libraries or recorded later. And part of the reason was I was in this apartment complex, and when you're living in like kind of a lower rent area, you're going to have a lot of neighbors, and that's just the way it is. And you can't be having the cops called on you because you're screaming or doing this or that. So one of the things that I just had to decide early on, that I was going to have to rebuild the sound from the floor up later in post. So by making that decision, I quickly went online and started searching for examples. YouTube is a great teacher. It's an amazing tool that I think anybody should take advantage of, because there's so much you can collect there. And one of the things I learned was Dario Argento, who did Suspiria and some other, there's like kind of schlocky Italian. They're not, calling them schlocky maybe an insult, because I think they're really great. One of the things he used to do was he would keep work and the sets being built on the next stage, and he would just make the decision to record everything, scratch track live, and then do everything later, which was that was basically my decision, because I had a fog machine running. I had all these things where I just was like, I'm not going to get great sound, and I didn't have the microphone for it. So I made a decision early on that I was going to record everything later. And that was a really long process, and going through and doing every little footstep and creak and all that. But I will say that if you take your time with audio, you can elevate a lesser camera to look like it's an amazing camera by really giving the whole world authenticity by going through and meticulously kind of placing all those sound effects yourself. You get a much higher result. It takes a lot longer, but I would encourage anybody to do it.
And if anybody had any questions for you, Tim, can they connect with you directly?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on Twitter at Tim Stabers, which is just at my name. And I'm also on YouTube, and that's Second Floor Pictures, which is the company name. And I think those are the two best ways to get in touch with me.
And the web series is called
The web
Dream
series
of
is,
Me.
Yes, the web series is called Dream of Me, and the hashtag for that is hashtag Dream of Me series. And if you put that into just about anything, you'll start to find other little things. I'm a big believer in Easter eggs and kind of hiding things out there for people to discover and find without kind of announcing them. So the more you dig, hopefully the better it will be for you. The more you'll feel rewarded, because I've always been a big person for Easter eggs, little special gifts from artists. So scour the web and you'll find some good things.
All right, Tim, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Forrest.
The versatile, lightweight GlideCam stabilizer. A GlideCam on your production means smooth, flowing video with easy operation. GlideCam, the name and future of camera stabilizers.